Yes, it's all happening. Brilliant. It's happening now. So right, let's just show you a nice Anglesey map. And right, come on, everything's really slow today. Oh. Are you still there?
Yeah.
My computer, yeah, my computer's crashed. Are you still there?
Yes.
My screen's gone blank. Can you see me?
Yes.
Oh, crumbs. Unfortunately, my screen's gone blank.
Hmm.
Yeah, I've lost my screen.
Start up again.
I can't see anything.
Oh.
Yeah, the thing is, if I start up again, I lose the connection.
Well,
Oh God. It's not where I am. It's the computer. My screen. I can hear you. Oh Christ.
Yeah.
Right, something's crashed my computer. Hang on a minute. It hasn't crashed it because I'm still here.
Oh.
I just gotta come in by the phone.
Phone's up, yeah.
You've got me.
Yeah. I got you, Dave.
So unfortunately, I don't have any images because they're all on the computer.
Oh well.
Oh, great. Right, I'll just try and swap this over. So if I do that. Right. Right, okay, let's kick that off. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, right. So I've lost all my images on the computer because it's gone off.
No.
So I'm just going to have to do it on the phone.
Understand. One.
What?
Wow. Oh.
Yeah, my screen's gone. Oh, great. Oh, fiddlesticks. Right. Right, okay. Right, okay, if we can do that. So we've got map. We've got the map. Oh, God. Guys, I can't seem to get this sorted. Screen. Start. Right. Okay, can you right, let's just see if we can see this.
Yes, it's popping up. Get back
Right,
on.
okay. All right, excellent.
Start sharing screen.
Right, there.
Yes. Got it.
Excellent.
Right on.
Right, good. So when we think about the Romans in Anglesey, we think about the history that is told to us initially when the Romans wished to assault Anglesey, and it's at the time of Suetonius Paulinus, and Suetonius Paulinus heads to Anglesey. We know the time when he's heading there, around 60 years AD, give or take a few months either side. And the reason why that's enshrined in history is because at that time you've got the revolt involving Boudica. So with that revolt involving Boudica, we can set the scene. So Suetonius Paulinus is campaigning on Anglesey, and the one thing that Suetonius Paulinus is doing as governor of Britain is to try and deal with some problematic elements that seems to still be a thorn in the Roman era and the ipso facto Roman conquest of a big chunk of Britain. Now, it's the only point in Roman writing that we hear the word Druids being used in the work of Tacitus. And you've got the words Druids being used, and only once, only one time. And I've always argued that the word Druid is a word used for problematic elements within the British psyche, and we don't actually hear the word being used after that. So whoever these people were that were being fought on Anglesey was some kind of resistance movement to Roman influence rather than the Roman conquest, because in many ways the Roman conquest of Britain was not a full conquest. It was a conquest that was laissez-faire. It was just a conquest that dealt with certain areas. So we didn't see every single village with a Roman banner flying in it. Not every Roman village, every native village with a banner of Rome flying in it. Lots of areas of Britain were just left as they had been throughout the Roman era. And that's one thing that I say in the books that I've written about the Roman period, particularly in the local area. So one of the things that is enigmatic of what's going on is when we head towards that locality between the A487 and the A55 is the spot of Carnarvon, and we've got Carnarvon being a very important locality in regards to being the location of a Roman fortress, i.e. the Roman fortress of Saguntium. And then we look at Anglesey as a whole, and one of the key reasons why the Romans are really interested in Anglesey is this top bit near that Great Lake. And that top bit is the area of Paris Mountain. And Paris Mountain itself is the area where copper is extracted. And we see extensive copper mining on Anglesey. And there's actually a Roman signal station of a description to be found on Paris Mountain. And then you go over to Holyhead, and you've got the Roman fort at Holyhead. Now, what I want to do, and what I had lined up on my computer, was that I wanted to show you some images of the fort. And the best way we can actually do that is to actually go on Google and to look through those images, and then I can give you a little bit of content. And what I wanted to do is tell you a little bit more about the ambience of what the Romans were doing on Anglesey, other than just the few things that I've actually mentioned. So let's go and just and it's the fort of Caer-Gybi at Holyhead. That's what we're talking about. And Roger's been there with me. So what we need to do is, if we go and we type in Caer-Gybi, there you go, Caer-Gybi, excellent, straight away. Now it's given that information there, and it's a nice little bit of text there. And oh, hang on a minute. Whenever you do that, right? Okay, let's just sort of go back out again. There is Caer-Gybi, our Holyhead. Now, what we do find is that when you step within the confines of the fort, there is that bit of the wall there, and all these bits of wall are actually the original, well, more or less the original Roman fort walls. And the reason why it's still there is because we've got that little bit of church. The church was actually built out of the ruins of the other buildings within the Roman fort. And sort of before we do actually look at that gen there, that information, what we need to do is to sort of look at some of the Roman masonry. And that would really be what we want to do, to sort of give a little bit of sighting. And Roger has been with me there, so we're just going to do, and we'll just type Caer Gibbie images. So we'll just type in that there, and we'll go straight to these images. And what do we want to go with first? We want to go with that. Now that's rather interesting, because that is actually the Roman wall as it sort of projects in a north, sort of a northerly direction, and that there where the graves are would head towards a quay. So that's the area of a Roman quay. So it was a quay that accessed the Roman fort directly. And when we look at some of these images, I think the most enigmatic image is actually, if we hang on a minute, related images. So let's just sort of scroll and I'll see if they got the image that I want. There, the entranceway. Now that's a rather interesting image for us today. Oh, hang on. Oh God, there. And if we do that, hang on, there. We look at the wall. It's a scheduled ancient monument, and what we can see is that this little entrance here has been altered and changed. Typical Roman masonry. And what we do find is that what you are seeing is some of the herringbone styling, which is typifying of this type of Roman fortlet. And it's interesting that it's still with us today. And I'm just trying to get to grips with, it was actually refortified later. And if we can, these are not the best images. That's actually from the inside as well. That's looking inside, and over towards the right hand side, you've actually got where the gateway is that we were looking. And it's all standard stonework. It's not totally typical of Roman build, but there's been a lot of changes to the site since. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to change the search. This is one of those things. If you ever do any types of searches for, anything on the internet, it's sometimes best to change the search. And actually, we've got some more images. And we've actually got more images. So you type in Caer Gibbie, you get you get those images that we've already seen. And if you type in Holyhead Roman Fort, you get rather more interesting images. So this is actually looking, the church is sort of on the left there, and on the right, if we go out of this and we look towards the entranceway there, where you park the minibuses. So you got that there. That's not going to be original architecture for the gateway, right? And I've got suspicions whether there was a gateway there anyway, right? But it's likely that there was, because there was always usually 4 gateways into a Roman fort, but obviously not in regards to the quay side. So if we go back out there, this is a little bit of a plan. So what you can see here, this is rather interesting, and there's lots of sort of other Roman sites here, and you can sort of see the typical sort of that sort of Segontium, which is in Carnarvon, which I've already mentioned, where you've got the 4 entranceways. Well, this fort itself is rather small. It's what you've seen. It is rather small, and it's whether what we are seeing in regards to, if you want to go with this as a reconstruction, maybe the fort was actually limited to where the word beach landing is, and there's actually a wall there between the towers, as I've already mentioned, and you can see this line going through it. If that postulates that there was in fact a gateway there, where the line is actually heading northwards. So it's a rather small fort, and the big question is, did it have those round towers associated with it initially? And the answer is, in all knowledge, no, because we don't the towers always seem to come first on these Roman sites in Roman Britain. And if it had towers at all, that's the question. But the main thing is this does the purpose. It's quite a low-lying wall today, to be honest with you, because it's very, very likely that there's about another 1.5 meters, 2 meters down below level. But it's not a wall that's towering. It's not a wall that's 10, 15 meters in height that you might actually associate with some of the other forts that we actually see in regards to Roman Britain. So see if we can tack into any more of these. And you can actually see there that's a nice image of the herringbone in the left-hand corner. And that there is telling you, is saying Caer-y-Gibbey Fort. That's from the Covline website. Now, you can basically see there where it's almost as if that tower's been fitted on. So you're thinking, well, is that Roman? It's likely that it is, but it's likely that it's later Roman rather than as part of the initial plan, is what I've been getting at. Usually towers were added to Roman fort walls or Roman town walls very, very late. Even when we look at the Roman towers in regards to Caer-Went, they're not added until 348. So we've got 100 years, and Roman Britain is more or less no more. But rather interesting here, where we've got that there is Igaea in Brecon. So it's rather different. Igaea is rather differently built than this one at Caer-y-Gibbey. You can see there that there's really nice dressed stonework, but there that's not. And it might be that this indicates that this is a more later fort than this one. And the reason why I'm saying this is a more later fort than this one, and this dates to roughly the 100s, 120s, still garrisoned occasionally into the 200s, maybe into the 300s. But this is really poor. And what we do start to see is that building work in Roman Britain in regards to these types of buildings starts to deteriorate. And maybe what we should do is maybe jump into the Covline site. And there you go. And it gives you a much better idea where we're looking at. And we'll read out the Covline information. So it's St. Gibby's Church. This is where the Roman fort is. And if we sort of zoom up, and we've got all this, actually, we've got a lot more nicer information there than the other ones. So maybe look at some of these images that they've got there. Looking at some more of this wall. Again, it looks rather crude compared to any of the other Roman stuff. And it survived because there have been buildings added to it and using the wall as additional structural support and so on. So what we see there is that there's the car park. Remember the car park, Roger? There you go. There's a car park there. Yeah. And there you go. That's the gateway we mentioned there, leading into car park. That doesn't look Roman. That tower there, it's just not Roman looking, right? But the masonry for these towers occasionally does look like the foundations might be. So you've got this directly into the church graveyard, and let's just postulate really that is the full extent of the fort. And I don't think I'd be too far wrong in saying that. And what else have we got there? We've got more of that, and there you go. That's with inside the church wall, and again, it's a real massive hodgepodge. It's not the typical Roman wall, but it is of Roman origin. So if we go back to the other information, let's see what we've got. I wasn't going to do this bit, but we may as well, because it's here. Caer-y-Gibbey is a stoutly walled rectangular enclosure that crowned a low cliff overlooking Holyhead Harbour. There you go. It is thought to be a late Roman, into the 200s, 300 years fort. Oh, well, there you go. I got that bit I got that right without even reading it. Strong point, presumably concerned with maritime activities. Yeah, we know that. At some point in the medieval period, a monastery was established there. The Gibbey Kibbe church. And interesting enough, in 1646, the fort of Holyhead held a parliamentary garrison. So obviously there's lots of changes being added to it. So to give you an idea of size, it's they're referring in this as a rectangular enclosure. It definitely is a rectangular enclosure. It's 67 meters from the one side of the car park to the other side, to 44 from, so we're talking about south to west, and the walls average about just nearly up to 2 meters in thickness and rise from 2.6 meters to 4 meters externally. And why is that? Because the ground level inside is going to be higher than the outside because the burials. So in other words, over time, if you want to talk about erosion and how things have changed, a really interesting point here, that 1.4 meters internally has been built up of human remains and earth and burial. So I always say that when I go into a church graveyard, if you ever go into a church graveyard, you get sort of this impression that the church graveyard has been built up because of in regards to lots of bodies in there and so on. So the inside side is now marked by a more recent wall along the top of the old cliff. I said it looked like it could be Roman, and it says more recent. So let's just go with that. Let's just bow down to more reason. I said it was possibly Roman. It's saying it's more recent, so I'll bow down to maybe I might be wrong there. There are round towers at each corner. Well, that's a rather interesting point, because we're talking about round towers at each of the corners. And if I want to make a little bit of a point to sort of keep everybody happy, okay, let's just go with these images. Images come up. All right, here we go. Now, I think the point I'm trying to make is if you look at this aerial view, okay, hang on a minute. Okay, what we do there, it's not letting me do the full thing. Hang on a minute. Okay, oh, there you go. Just try and get that image again, folks. Hang on a minute. Oh, come on. Do. I wanted that image. Oh, there we go. If we look at that, you can see the left hand and the right hand corner, and the bottom left and the right right, the bottom right, and you can see there that it clearly drops because of the shadow. And between the top tower and the bottom tower, if that's it complete, then surely that alignment between those towers must have Roman origins. But I will definitely concur that what we are seeing is that it's been added to because it's been used over the period since. So what I want to do is get to these notes again. Okay, the details. Let's get the details there. So there we go. We got that. And it's saying that there are rounded towers. Those at the western angles are about 5 meters across. I'm not saying that they are original. I'm just not. The eastern towers are about 7.5 meters across. I don't agree with that. They're too big. And it goes into say the northeast tower is thought to be a medieval rebuild. Yeah, we'll agree with that. Restored in the 1600s as part of the parliamentary site. So the original towers themselves that were added later on in the Roman period. It must have been really later in the Roman period, because if the site's been constructed in up to about the 300s, we've only got about 150 years of use there, and then by about 450, the site's going to be completely abandoned. So these towers are really, really late. And that's the point. And obviously, they've been demolished and changed since. Excavations beyond the north walls uncovered the wall of a building abutting the northwest tower. This was of similar construction to the tower and is likely to have been Roman. There was no trace of a ditch on this side, given that the work was refortified in the medieval period. The placement of a garrison here in the 1600s could reflect an earlier practice. So we're not exactly sure of everything being Roman there, but it's a rather important site. So what I'd like to do, I'd like to talk generally about the Romans and Anglesey. And actually, what I'm going to do, I'm going to stop my screen share, and we're just going to have a little bit of a chat, because that'll be nice to do. Hang on a minute. Let's put that there. Stop the share. That'll be nice to have a little bit of a chat for the next 15 minutes or so. So what we've got when we think about karl-james, and we think about the fort is one of Europe's only 3-walled Roman forts. The fourth side fronted the sea and was probably the site of the quay. Well, we've had a look at that. But there's definitely a key there anyway, because it drops down. Its date is unknown, and my notes again tell us that actually it may have been built not in the late 200s, but more in the later 300s, which would explain. It's good to have people disagreeing in dates. I like it when we got a fort that's really later, because I really like later Roman stuff. It's associated with Saguntium. So, Saguntium is a little bit further south east, as we know, and it was maybe seen to be a place that assisted the defense and export of copper outside this part of Roman Britain. And what we do have is a watchtower, as I've already mentioned, in regards to Paris Mountain, and we've got Holyhead Mountain, and we've got 2 sites. We've got the Paris Mountain one, and we've got Holyhead Mountain, and we've got this watchtower on Holyhead Mountain in particularly, known as Mynydd y Tŵr, Holyhead Mountain, and that probably offered signals over to Paris Mountain, which was on the heart of the big island of Anglesey. So you've got these 2 sort of known watchtowers on high promontories in regards to the landscape of Anglesey and the Holyhead Island, and which was almost certainly used as the fort's lookout point. And it's sort of saying that maybe the fort didn't have a long use. If it was built in the late 300s, it may not have continued in use beyond the 400s, but we do not know. We do know that in the old fort, it gave sanctuary and some protection and building material for the construction of a monastery there associated with Saint Kibbe. So that would be more of a native saint associated with the old Christian religion, rather than the Christianity of Rome that's coming over towards the late 500s and the early 600s. So Kibbe, Saint Kibbe, and the monastery that is actually associated there. So I was going to look a little bit more on the Romans in Anglesey, and I wanted to give you a few more of those succulent facts, and that's what we're going to do. And as I said, I had all the other stuff rolled up on the other computer, and so what I'd like to do is I wanted to do the whole of Anglesey today, but it really screwed things up with my laptop, and obviously I didn't want you guys waiting around too much longer, so I wanted to get into it. So I always like to countermand and disagree with some of the texts that we do read in connection with anything to do with Roman Britain. But I might actually say that the island of Anglesey, otherwise the island of Mona, it comes from the Latin for Anglesey, and again we think that the name actually might have actually come from the Roman period anyway. And I think the one point I wanted to mention is that there's probably no Roman influence or any Roman links with Anglesey until about 60 years AD. It's very unlikely that there's anything going on there, Roman influence, before that point. And it's that sort of idyll of Suetonius Paulinus, and he got onto the island and stuff was dealt with, and then he had to withdraw his legions all the way to deal with the revolt that was unfolding in regards to Boudica, in and around Colchester, Verulamium, heading up the Watling Street and all that gubbins. And then eventually what we do see is, if there was an abandonment of any sign of Roman influence on Anglesey, at that stage, what we do see is Gnaeus Julius Agricola in his campaigns around the late 70s years AD into 80 odd years AD, that we actually sats the Anglesey well under the heel of the likes of Agricola. So I'm not really sure we would have met a written history of Suetonius Paulinus's campaigns on Anglesey if it hadn't have been for the Boudican revolts. It was just Tacitus sort of added it on. There was, no, I'm not, a real event. Tacitus basically said, look, there's this going on. Oh, by the way, we've got this revolt involved in Boudica, and he just starts to discuss that. So he describes that in the Annals, and it was a history of the Roman Empire from Tiberius's reign until Nero. So what we've got, we've got a history of the Roman world for probably about let me get my stuff in here for about 70 odd years, and it's basically sort of Tacitus was actually related to Gnaeus Julius Agricola. So he's going to talk about Agricola's campaigns in regards to Anglesey, which was written to record and extol the life and accomplishments of Tacitus's father-in-law. Tacitus may have used first-hand accounts from Agricola, who had been present with the Roman forces on both occasions. Agricola had been present in 60 years AD, and obviously, as he's now standing to be the man who's in charge of the later invasion. So what we then have, we've got a problem, right? After the conquest, we don't really have any mentions of Anglesey. That's it. It just disappears from history. But what we do have, I'm talking about written history, folks. What we do have is evidence of a growing number of Roman fortifications on Anglesey, not just the one that we're talking about in connection with Carragibby, but there is other evidence of forts being found elsewhere on Anglesey. And obviously you've got these two lookout stations on Paris and Holyhead Mountain. And you've got the links with the Holyhead Mountain, or well, let's not call it that, the Holyhead end, where you've got an Iron Age camp, not an Iron Age camp, an Iron Age village, that we do see evidence of Roman influence there as well. So even though the Iron Age village continues, there's this an inferred sort of link with the Roman era in regards to the site. So archaeologists have located a fort dated shortly after the conquest. Later in the middle of the Roman period, there was a trading settlement on the shore of the Menai Straits. In the last decades of Roman rule, there are military installations on the north and western coasts, and the village of huts huddled together on a hill for defense. However, no major civic center nor prestigious dwellings are known so far from the island, and cultural exchange seems to have been much less than in most other parts of the empire. So in other words, it's one of those locations that seems to imbue the Roman idea, rather than actual massive Roman influence. And what I'd like to do is just quickly chuck this in here. So the invasion of Anglesey took sometime around 60 years AD. And here we go. This is what Tacitus tells us. We can't do this without Tacitus, right? Tacitus said that Suetonius Paulinus built flat-bottomed vessels to cope with the shallows of the Menai Straits. which is from the mainland to Anglesey itself, and uncertain depths of the sea. Thus, the infantry crossed while the cavalry followed by fording, or where the water was deep, swam by the side of their horses. I can't see it in my eyes, but it looks good. He does not state where these boats were built. Probably built sometime along the shoreline. And what else have we got? So Suetonius is marched to the Menai Straits, may have used the oldest known crossing of the river Dee, some 13 kilometers south of Chester and Holt. Anyway, we move on and we start to go along the northern coast past Abergwyngeggin, and then the Roman forces then had to cross the Menai Straits, a narrow strip of water. The sea crossing would be short and relatively easy at slack water, but at full strength, the tidal currents were up to 7.5 knots and quite treacherous, so he got away with it. The later invasion under Agricola took the natives by surprise because they had expected to see a fleet in plenty of time to gather their defense of the island. They just crossed on both occasions. The location of Menai crossings are not known, and modern suggestions are purely speculative. Professor William Manning of Cardiff University suggested that a possible site is at the northern end of the strait, near the present city of Bangor. So there's a debate where the crossing would have been and where the cavalry actually got across, and there's lots of information here. And interesting enough, as we go over, on Anglesey, there's a parish known as Llaniddan, towards the southwest end of the Menai Straits, so sort of away from the Anglesey side towards the other side, southwest. And it's interesting that in this area, Anglesey, that in 1867, it was suggested that local field names known as Maes Hirgad, which means area of long battle, and Caer Oer Ad, field of cold or bitter lamentation, may indicate the site of Roman attack. So it's preserved in the place names back to 1867. Llaniddan location requires a longer sea crossing of 830 meters across at high tide. So it would have needed to have been done appropriately. And this is that point. The landing was opposed by a mass of warriors and women back in 60 years AD, not the Agricola one. Tacitus, the first invasion. Tacitus describes the following. Now, this is the only mention of the Druids ever in a Roman context in Britain. On the shore stood the opposing army with its dense array of armed warriors, while between the ranks dashed women in black attire like the Furies, with hair dishevelled, waving brands. All around the Druids, lifting up their hands to heaven and pouring forth dreadful imprecations, scared our soldiers by the unfamiliar sight, so that if their limbs were paralyzed, they stood motionless and exposed to wounds. Roman soldiers are not often described as scared to paralysis, and their reception must have been an extraordinary experience even for professional soldiers. So what we did, we read the Tacitus stuff, and then we added the Roman soldiers all the way down to professional soldiers. How the Romans rallied and won a savage victory over people who they regarded as savages. Tacitus then tells us, then urged by their generals' appeals and mutual encouragements not to quail before a troop of frenzied women, they bore the standards onwards, smote down all resistance, and wrapped the foe in the flames of his own brands. A force was next set over the conquered, and their groves, devoted to inhuman superstitions, were destroyed. They deemed it indeed a duty to cover their altars with the blood of captives and to consult their deities through human entrails. No sacred groves have ever been found in Anglesey. So was Tacitus telling us something of truth? So occupation and abandonment. The Roman army remained on Anglesey long enough to begin the process of garrisoning the island, but shortly received serious news of Boudica. Suetonius, while thus occupied, received tidings of the southern revolt of the province. Suetonius, however, with wonderful resolution, marched amidst a hostile population back to London. the Roman troops left Anglesey, which remained free from Roman rule for 16 years until Agricola. So Agricola gets there, he conquers the island, and I would have said more about that, but what I want to do is just sort of talk generally. So what we do find is that after 77 years AD, they found in 1990 at a site known as Kemlin the outlines of a Roman site, which was characteristically, through geophysics, seen to be a Roman fortlet, and thanks to aerial photography. Partial excavations of the site indicated that it may actually date to probably the period of Hadrian, and when it may have been a practice fort, maybe. So life under long-term Roman control, you've got Anglesey is administered from Saguntium. We've got little in the way of domestic evidence that there's indicated at a place known as karl-james, which is more of a recent one, that there might actually be evidence of some kind of agricultural activity in the Roman period, which would be naturally important for the Roman military. So we've got the copper being exploited at Paris Mountain, and we know that some 18 round ingots of copper, 8 with Roman stamps, have been found on the island. So we know that the Romans were exploiting copper on the island. We know that from the copper ingots have actually been found, and 2 were actually found on Paris Mountain itself. And we don't know where this copper was actually smelted. So we do have in regards to evidence of various coins being found on the island dated from 1 to the 300s, and there was obviously some great interchange. And we got this site at karl-james, whenever that was constructed, maybe in the late 200s into maybe the late 300s. And when talking about this, I think the importance of these watchtowers on Holyhead Mountain and Paris Mountain come into their own to sort of push us to understanding there's lots of communication there and the importance of the copper. It's likely that the island was really under garrison by about the 400s, but the garrison did remain at Saguntium, and possibly maybe we could look a little bit more about Saguntium next week. So we're going to call that a day now. So are there any questions, you two?
No, I think that's okay, Carl.
Sorry about the cock up. It was just like it was buggering around trying to find that image that made us a little bit late, and then it crashed my computer. So whatever that was on that image, whatever was on that map, it needs to be looked into. So what we're going to do next week, we will be discussing about what we'll be doing from that moment onwards after next week. But the next week is the last one of this series. So if you've got no other questions, sexy Rog. Okay. What about you, Richie Pitchy?
Interesting. The other thing is, I won't be able to make next week. I got a hospital appointment, so. What
do you want to go and do that for? What do you want to?
I know.
Oh, you're so selfish.
I did tell you on Monday.
Yeah, you did actually. You did. All right then. Well, the other thing as well is, seeing as next week is the last one. Roger, we've had this discussion before. Is this the only Wednesday that you can actually do? This is the only day of the week you can actually do, is it?
At the moment, yes.
Okay, we'll leave it as it is. I'll see you next week then, Rog.
Okay, yeah.
So if there's no other questions from Richard and Rog, I will see you next week, Roger.
Okay.
And
yeah, cheers,
I'll see you next week as well, Rich. Thank you very much, Richard and Roger. I'll see you then.
Okay.
See you Monday, Rich. See you
No.
next week. Oh, Roger, see you on Tuesday as well.
No, Tuesdays. Oh yes, next week. That's okay. Yeah, Tuesday. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I'll see you then, Rog.
Cheers. Thanks.
Cheers. Bye. Bye. Take care. Thanks for watching, everybody, and over and out.